So this 1.4 balance video took a little while to get out, but I wanted to test this stuff on the PTS before I started talking about it. Now keep in mind my opinions here are not final. A few days isn't enough time to really form any lasting opinions on this much balance, because it takes a few weeks for things to really settle in. Now I've noticed this update has been highly praised because of the support balance, and honestly, the support balance is pretty phenomenal and was something we really needed. However, I don't want the community to get so caught up in the support balance that they forget about the other things that aren't so phenomenal. They've made this PTS a week long to collect our feedback and make adjustments accordingly like they've done in the past with other longer PTS cycles, so it's important we look at everything equally so we can give them good feedback on everything. So let's start talking about everything. First up is Androxus getting a really nice buff to Defiance. It's now an extended energy punch, and it seems to go about 10 feet or so if I was to guess. This definitely makes Defiance much more useful. Andro is supposed to get close to deal full damage, but he isn't supposed to get right up in an enemy's face, and that's what the old Defiance required. The new Defiance allows you to land your melee attack in Andro's preferred range. Now, this doesn't fix the semi-auto spam problem that many of us have been against from the start, but it does breathe new life into Andro, and it makes him a stronger close-range duelist. His Darkstalker talent now also activates at 50% max health instead of 40%. This makes it a bit better, but in my opinion, Heads Will Roll is still a lot better. Crits do so much burst, and the extra 2 bullets is really nice, while Darkstalker is just a little bit of bonus damage on low targets. It sounds useful for tanks, but if you want a flank that can burst tanks, there are other options like Koga, Talus, or Maeve, not to mention how easy it is to crit a tank with Heads Will Roll. Unfortunately, Ashe isn't getting any of the buffs that are needed. They made her ultimate jump up faster, and this is a win-lose, because while it makes it go off faster, it also makes it so you have less air control during it. What this character really needs is buffs or reworks to her talents because they're all pretty lackluster and have been for a while. Bomb King got a good nerf to Royal Subjects, it's 20% instead of 30% now. Royal Subjects has never really been a talent anyone wanted in the game, and like Darkstalker, I think it would have been best to just rework it, but it's nice they addressed it. Hopefully this will make deciding between his talents a bit harder, but part of me feels like it's still going to end up being the go-to for Bomb King. Buck got a pretty nice rework to Bucking Madness. Instead of kills prolonging his ult, he now gains 20% attack speed for 10 seconds after getting an Elim. Now this is really cool, because it's much more useful than the old version and it does give Buck a different playstyle. It even affects his ultimate as well. I'm really curious to see how good this will be. I'm hoping it'll be up there with Bulk Up and Ensnare, so that there can be 3 to pick from at a high level. I do still personally think that Bulk Up gives the most value more often, but not a ton more value. Now Cassie, who did get a nerf to Impulse this update. Unfortunately, it went from an instant 1380 burst to a 1280 burst, so that's still most of a Squishy's health pool gone instantly. With the right build, just hitting Impulse once makes its cooldown 5 seconds. And if it's so much as tags another nearby enemy, it's 3 seconds. So it can be up very often, and the Impulse cooldown reduction card is different from others like it, because the card doesn't have an internal cooldown, so it can be activated over and over again. I have fired off 4 Impulses back to back before. That is not balanced. The card needs an internal cooldown. Also, Blast Shot needs something that Leon had on the PTS before they updated it and took it off. Basically what happened was while firing, Leon could not use Valor. This is exactly what Cassie needs on her Blast Shot. It would solve the burst problem, and you could even buff Impulse back up since it can't be comboed anymore. I also want to point out that Exaction still has around the same burst as pre-nerf Impulse, with the same combo, so this lockout would solve that problem also. I also really want to say that I hope Leon does not get that lockout. Leon does not need it. Leon has always been in a good spot balance-wise, regardless of the annoying aimbot. Never top tier, never bottom tier. It's really important to know when to leave a character alone, because if you nerf characters who don't need it, you can never reach the point where they're all balanced and viable. Evie received some much-needed bug fixes to her blink. I don't think this is all the bugs her blink has, but it's some of the most glaring ones for sure. Now, I didn't play her enough to notice a big difference, but when playing against Evie, it seemed a lot harder to kill her during her blink, and that's mainly because the third-person blink animation was completely removed. It's instant now, and it was kind of annoying, but I couldn't kill her mid-blink anymore, so that's very good for the character. Her Snow Globe talent was also buffed up. It now has a duration of 3 seconds and only needs 50% of your ult to activate it. So you could have 2 ults stacked on top of each other at once, and that's pretty crazy, because your team could have 6 ultimates going into a team fight, and that could be a big advantage. Again, I didn't really play a whole lot of it, so I don't know if this is better than Wormhole or not. We'll see. Wormhole did get a nerf. It doesn't give you 1 second off blink anymore, and that kind of sucks, and this is why. If you blink once and decide it isn't best to blink back, you have to wait 4 seconds for the second blink to wear off, and 4 more seconds for the actual cooldown. So you effectively have an 8-second cooldown if you don't blink back. With the old Wormhole, this was only 6 seconds if you don't blink back. Now, there's an easy fix to this. They can make it that if you don't blink back, it's a 2-second cooldown instead of a 4-second one, so the total goes back down to 6. I think that's fair. It solves the cooldown problem and still keeps people from constantly spamming blink. Furia received some very solid nerfs. They've already nerfed her healing in the past, and now they've gone and nerfed her heal distance down from 175 to 120, and nerfed 2 of her cards. Hollowed Sight had its reveal length reduced from 2 to 1 second, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't know that this was a card until now. Light of Dawn also had its barrier health reduced from 100 to 50, and this is really nice because this was probably her strongest card. And even when dead zoned, you could still give your target 400 temporary health at level 4. I think this really puts her in a more balanced spot while still being a really good healer. I know a lot of people have problems with her damage. I personally don't. Furia was made to be that solid healer damage mix. This is a healer that people can pick and be able to defend themselves with against flanks, while also still sustaining a team. So if they were to nerf her damage, they'd have to be very careful, because often when devs mess with what a character is about, they lose what the character was supposed to be. So we'll see how it goes. Grohk. Okay, Grohk got tons of love. Tons! His lightning staff deals up to 30% more damage the longer you're on a target. His healing totem can be deployed at up to 100 feet. His ult now lets him fly and has increased radius and duration. Maelstrom has 1.5 second cooldown reduction instead of 0.3, and Spirit's Domain now lets your primary fire heal friendlies. Okay, so yeah, a lot of really good buffs. The increased damage is very noticeable if the Grohk has good tracking. You don't have to risk yourself so much to put a totem down, and you can put it on areas lower or higher than you without having to go to those levels. His ult is a meme. It's better, but it's a meme. You can't fly off into the sky or into the enemy without dying, obviously. You have to use it smart and keep yourself out of line of sight when using it, even when you're flying. The controls on it are pretty bad though. It's not like Willow ult that has WASD and spacebar to fly around with. No, it uses the camera, and that needs to be swapped to WSD and spacebar because it feels a lot better. Maelstrom was the only thing about Grohk that didn't need a buff. It's actually pretty insane now, especially with Ying coming back into the game, since you can just hit your pulses on her illusions and they'll start bouncing. When it comes to this buff, I think it should honestly be reverted. The new Spirit's Domain is really good if you have good tracking, and it makes him a viable solo healer as long as you can properly balance dealing damage and healing with an ammo-focused build. Now, it makes him a viable one, but not an ideal one. Like, when going into ranked, there's still going to be blatantly better picks, like Furia, Damba, Genos, Ceres, and now Ying. I'd put him with 1.3 Grover to put his viability into perspective. Again, viable but not ideal, so you probably never pick him as a solo healer. Speaking of Grover, he also got some nice buffs. Blossom cooldown reduced from 12 to 10 seconds, so you can burst heal more often, and Deep Roots now roots for 1 second and bounces to nearby enemies. Obviously, healing Grover is still going to need to be running Efflorescence, but if you have a very mobile enemy team comp, Deep Roots could prove to be pretty good as long as your teammates respond to the roots quickly. I am very interested in seeing how this does. Khan's barrier talent went from 60 to 100% increased effectiveness. This makes it recharge very quickly, but it's still heavily outclassed by firing line. Maeve's Street Justice talent got messed with. Now it executes enemies at 35% health. Now you know how Maeve could kill a tank like Fernando through their barrier? Well, now that it's an execute and not flat damage, it can kill Ruckus and Torvald through their personal barriers now as well. So no tank barrier works against it anymore at all. You also can't counter the pounce with Haven anymore. So there's less counterplay than before with this new version. There's also a bright skull placed on the target you can execute, so you don't have to know what health ranges you can execute characters at, you are just told when you can. I won't lie, this is one of the most disappointing things about this update. Maeve needs buffs to her base kit, and Street Justice needs to be reworked into something else. Like there was a talent data mined where dagger hits lower the cooldown of 9 lives. Why not give us that one instead, because this new version of Street Justice is definitely not what we want. It doesn't solve the character's problems, it just creates more balance problems. Makoa got a new Davy Jones locker talent. It isn't good, but it isn't bad. It's just a funny meme mainly. You're never going to want to use it in a serious setting, especially over Leviathan, but it can be a fun time. I honestly wish this talent was more seamless. It'd be really cool if you could go in and out of the spin quickly with no cooldown. It would make it more fluid and viable and solidify it as an actual playstyle and not just a throwaway meme. Damba's Ripened Gourd now has an effect where it has a 50% chance to not go on cooldown. The second this was announced, it was hated. Nobody wants RNG in this game. Nobody. This talent could work 8 times in a row, or it could fail 8 times in a row. It needs to be reworked. Honestly, doing something like making it have cooldown reduction the more it heals would be better. No RNG please, ever again. Moji received a heavy nerf to her only viable talent, Toot. The movement speed bonus is being taken away and the duration of the cloud is going down to 3 seconds instead of 6. Now, I absolutely hate this. On PC, this character is pretty low tier. One of the worst and is probably about to become the worst. However, on console this character is very good. I put out a post asking console players to help me explain why, and I got some really intelligent and helpful responses, so thank you guys for that. I even got a response from Prosper Logic, who is a current member of Flashpoint, and if you guys don't know who that team is, they won the Spring Console Wars LAN and got 3rd place in the summer one. He said that Moji plays with the tanks and supplies heals and speed boosts to herself and them while also putting high DPS into enemy tanks. It was also a general consensus from you guys that Hi-Rez put out a console update a while back that crippled your aim. It took the aim functionality and made it way less effective and worse, so it's difficult to turn in time to deal with things, and it's difficult to track such high-speed targets, and Moji makes everything a high-speed target. Now, because of this, I agree with these nerfs being needed on console 100%. However, console and PC, from the start, should have always been balanced separately. On PC, that speed bonus is the only real compensation for her wide hitbox. Without it, it's even easier to hit her. Now, Martini did say he's not satisfied with her, implying that they're gonna do more with her in the future. But when you basically kill a character off on a system, you can't wait for future updates to give them compensation when you know you're killing them. You gotta do it in the same update. Honestly, like I've said before, if the burst meta was removed and her hitbox was reduced, I think Moji would be really good. But now that Toot's getting nerfed, the character needs a lot more love because all of her talents will suck in 1.4. Pip's combat medic talent got a new effect where attacking your teammates heals them. Now, if you hit a teammate and an enemy at the same time, it does heal the ally and hurt the enemy, yes. You can also throw a potion and attack a teammate at the same time to get a nice 1800 burst. But for the most part, this talent is really only good for topping teammates off since it's only 600 healing per second. It takes around 3 seconds to get a squishy up to full, and it's not really viable solo heal wise unless your team plays very slow. Mega Potion is still the go-to for solo healing. Ceres' heal distance was increased from 100 to 120 to match her sister, and Soul Collector goes up to 15 stacks instead of 8. With no HP cards, Ceres can go up to over 2,800 health with Soul Collector, and with HP cards it can go up to over 3,000. Her damage also goes up to 277 per orb. It's pretty crazy, but I don't really know how viable it's going to end up being, honestly. Maybe something like Soul Collector Ceres and Combat Medic Pip together could work? Who knows? Shaolin got a good nerf, but it wasn't really what he needed. Desert Shadow lost 2 seconds of the invis time, but you do still have as much time as before to fire that heavy burst arrow, and burst is really what they needed to nerf. Having a 1250 burst talent and a 1300 burst talent isn't good for the game, especially with how often you can have them up. These talents need to have their bonus damage removed, and his FPS bug needs to be fixed. Preferably at the same time, because as much as I don't like the guy, I wouldn't want him to be nerfed without the glaring bug getting fixed. Tyra got a few things here. Hunting Party now gives the mark 2 charges. Her favorite Cory card's reveal time got reduced from 2 seconds per level to 1. Now this is good because Tyra was able to put a mark on somebody for 16 seconds with the card maxed out, and that's ridiculous. You could only get it off with debuff cleanses, and most of those are on high cooldown abilities with the exception of Koga's Shadow Step. It was pretty annoying for flanks, and even though there's less duration, it's still going to be bad for flanks, because now there's going to be 2 constant reveals. Because you can get it back before the cooldown is over. Now you can pop a mark on a flank, and if they use an ability to cleanse it, you can just pop it back on them again. Constant reveals suck for flanks, and flanks don't need any more nerfs of any kind. Thankfully, Tyra is a low tier character, so this won't be seen too much. Strix's broken unauthorized use talent is already more than enough. Mercy Kill also got a buff. It now will always do 35% max health as damage, so there's never a wrong time to fire it off and there's no wasted overkill damage. Torvald, oh boy, his bubble duration is going from 2 to 3 seconds. So 5 with Thanks Grandpa, and the cooldown is going from 9 to 8 seconds. There is a lot wrong with this. They keep putting all of Torvald's power into his bubble, and it's the only thing that doesn't need buffs. Torvald himself needs to be made stronger, not his bubble. If built right, you can have your bubble on somebody 100% of the time. You could constantly be pocketing some DPS or flank, and that is an incredibly frustrating thing to fight. Nobody liked old Torvald when his bubble was OP, and people aren't gonna like it any better now. Buff other aspects of Torvald so he's not a bubble bot. Make him more fun to play, not just a I'm gonna make this DPS constantly win button. Victor got a new effect for gunnery. Instead of 15% bonus damage while aiming down sights, it now makes his weapon burst fire, increasing its damage and effectiveness at a distance. Now this felt really good. It's way more unique and satisfying than old gunnery, but I don't think it's better than his nade talent because his nade talent is so blatantly stupid and powerful. The 950 burst in a big AoE is so very useful and can be used so often that it can't be beat unless it's nerfed, and it really should be nerfed. Vivian is now able to deploy 2 sensor drones. It's not charges, so you can't toss 2 out at once. No, you have to toss out 1, wait out the cooldown, and toss out another. Now again, constant reveals suck for flanks, but thankfully, you can simply destroy the deployables and have 8 seconds to move freely before Vivian gets one back. And Vivian is also low tier, so it'll probably be okay. Her booby trap talent got some buffs too. It now applies knockback and its arm time is 0.1 seconds instead of 0.9. This is cool, but the reveal is a lot stronger than the bomb, and when you're playing Vivian, you're almost always going to be using Sapper rounds because it's a fantastic talent. Unless there are no barriers, then you're probably using her bonus damage one since it's more consistent damage and it doesn't cost you your reveal. Ying got a very exciting buff to Life Exchange. Right-clicking heals allies for 800 if there's an illusion up, and it doesn't destroy the illusion. Now, this is an 800 burst that you aim like a Damba right-click, and it's 800 regardless if there's 1 illusion up or 2. Now, people were worried that you could use a cooldown card to make her right-click a 0.5 second cooldown, but the game doesn't let you lower cooldowns below 50% of the base. So the lowest you can make her right-click cooldown is 2 seconds. Regardless of that, Ying is the only healer that has 3 ways to heal allies: her illusions, her right click, and her ultimate. Now this is very strong because you can get out a lot of healing, but there is a downside. Ying cannot defend herself. Her damage is so low without focusing lens or detonating her illusions that anything could kill her. All Ying can really do is run. So while Ying can heal a ton, you gotta protect her better and more often than any other support in the game. That's the balancing factor. I feel like Ying is going to be a top healer, at least in public games, and that's really exciting because Ying has deserved this for a long time. Bravo Hi-Rez. And that's really everything. My biggest problem with this update is the lack of attention to the burst meta. Cassie barely got nerfed, Shaw didn't get his burst nerfed, Willow is untouched, and Drogo's Fire Spit Salvo combo is still a thing. Those things really need proper attention. I know they said their way of countering the burst meta was to buff up all the healing like they did now, but let's face it. Cauterize is in the game, and the burst happens really fast. I don't think it's going to do anything. The support balance though still is really great work, really is. Support mains are very pleased, and I'm very thankful I can play Ying again. Ying is the whole reason I got into this game in the first place. Anyway, what do you guys think about all the balance? Let me know in the comments below, and that's pretty much it guys. I want to thank you all for watching, I very much appreciate it, and I'm going to see you guys later. Bye!